Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Lisa here. Let's do some painting. Previously, when we've painted our colourful skies, we've just done that only, a sky. So this is a great photo I took of a local sunset. I love the blend from the sky down into the mountains. And I hope you can see the nice deep purple colour of these distant hills, and that's what I want to teach you today, just so that you're not just doing skies that don't connect to anything. There's another example, a photo I took of a local beach, and again it's quite subtle, but you can see the deep Payne's grey there, and then a softer level behind it blending up into the sky. So when we do have skies that throw a lot of colour, we have to be able to understand that and then to add that into our painting. So we're just going to make something up similar to this, but I want to talk you through the colours and the best way to go about it. If you're painting along with me, or if you're going to try this one out, I would suggest redoing another sky if you cannot use one that we've done. And wetting along the bottom edge of that sky. Now, it doesn't matter if you go up into your sky or not, because it's been previously dried, you shouldn't have to worry about that. And what I'm going to use is a combination of my burgundy, which is, if you remember from the last episode, it was the burnt carmine. Okay. Remember, you can make it with magenta and brown, or magenta and burnt sienna if you have that combination. You can even add a little bit of French ultramarine blue in. So I am going to add French ultramarine blue. I'm going to pour it out separately because it's my cool colour, but it's also my distant hills colour. Now, depending on where you're living, your distant hills might be snow-capped mountains. Here they're not. I live in a subtropical part of the world, so I have palm trees or greenery, and I'm just putting a really soft, you can see how much water's there because it's really running. I'm doing it heavier because here is where the sun is behind the cloud, so that's where the contrast is going to be more intense. I don't want it to run too much like it has there, so I'm going to have to feather that off. And then over here it can be a little bit more gentle as it is there. I don't want a really strong straight line at the bottom of this. While I'm going to load more in lower down, because I'm actually creating a new line, a forward line of trees, and I'm going to throw a little bit of that burnt carmine in there. More ultramarine. And if you have a skyline or if you have a tree line to follow, then do that. But again, with me, you know, my watercolour happy place is just going with it. So that's what I'm choosing to do here. Now what I'm doing is I'm adding a third colour, which is going to be my, this is still a Derwent set, by the way, just a smaller one. It's just going to be my typical dark green. And I'm letting it bleed right into my bottom edge, but what I might do is do some vertical strokes. They're random, I'm not colouring in, I'm actually vertically dabbing and pulling my hand down as I dab. Now, if you want a different type of tree, you might do a little swirl, and it is going to give you a different looking tree. It's fine to leave a few little white gaps if you want to. That can become roofs of houses in the distance or lights. But for the time being, I don't want to overcomplicate this. We're going to do many more landscapes and build up things like this. So go with your own level of enjoyment. I don't want you to start feeling like it's overwhelming you. So adding more in at the bottom, and we're just always pulling downwards. So keep an eye on here. If you're really not happy with something, you've got to attend to that before you keep going down the page. I've kind of got a line here, so I'm trying to get rid of that line. Now, remember when we've done before with the blurry background, we can keep wetting the edge. That's a really good idea, so you don't get a really strong, stark line. And as I go now, I can get darker areas and I can start to introduce a lighter green. So my light green is too pretty, so I'm going to add a little bit of brown to it. And that's going to be my slightly lighter green. Remember, it's not the normal blue sky, so we don't want a normal pretty green either. And throw in more of my heavy dark. And I'm just making these random shapes, letting the watercolour push and pull the paint around where my paper is wettest. So I'm connecting them though, but I'm also leaving little gaps of the lighter paper. It looks, I'm making it look simple, I know, because of the flow that I'm working with. But if you can practice this, and I guess even re-watch the video to see where you may have done it a little bit too slowly, or because it does take confidence to do it as well. But it's something I want you to learn as a beginner, because if you don't start learning these more busy techniques now, it'll be something you might want to avoid in the future, and it's something you can actually do. It's just your brain that's going to be overwhelming you. It's nothing we haven't done before, actually. Just layering colour. You know, think of the background of the flower, and if you muck up, then you can come back in with some almost silhouetted dark Payne's grey trees in the foreground, or branches or something like that. So now we might make a little bit of a meadow or a paddock, and it's just green, it's just a green field. So I'm just pulling out the lightest version of my dark green here. It's very watered down, and it's going to be shadowy along the tree line. But then as I get over, it's going to get lighter. And if you like, you can even incorporate some of the sky colour. So I've got a little bit of magenta here with a tiny bit of purple added to it. And there's nothing wrong with running that over your wash, because what you're doing is you're actually making that colour connection. You know, when the sun's setting and you get that cast of light, it's golden light, or a little bit later on it's a pinkish light, and there's nothing wrong with throwing that over your foreground, whether it's grass or water or sand, but it does make that connection between land and sky. And I'm just going to finish it off really abstractly with a little bit more movement of that darker colour. Sorry guys, I'm losing my voice. Now, excuse me, that's all very soft. I would wait for that to dry, or as it is drying, if you want to particularly paint a tree over the top, then you would wait. But for this one, I would suggest not to do a tree. I would suggest to just get a nice fine point round brush that comes to a good tip, and as the grass is drying, the wash in the foreground, with your dark green and even with your lighter green, just try doing some nice wispy grasses that are they're going to be quite sharp, but not too sharp, because they're going on to still wet paint. And also, you don't have to do too many. It's just a suggestion. And this is, you know how I'm always saying flat like a sand shoe? This is a stiletto, okay? You want to have my little fingers, the tip of my finger is touching the paper, and that's my gauge of distance. And I run my fingernail along the page, and I make sure that when I move my whole arm, the rest of my hand is not on the paper, that my tip of my brush is just touching. Sometimes I miss, and I'm quite okay with that, missing. But yeah, that gives you, a little bit of context for this little gentle scene. And once that dries, you can layer that more and more if you like. If you like what you've done, or if you think, oh, I didn't make it hilly enough, or I want this darker over here. There's nothing wrong with re-wetting a little area and then coming back in with, like, let's just say you wanted a little building. That's the beauty of this. You're far enough away that it's nice and soft. But there's nothing wrong with playing around with things while it's drying. And as a beginner, this is the stuff you're not really game to do, but this is the stuff you should be doing. This builds your technique range. It builds interest in different things. It actually gives you confidence whether you're doing an epic fail or not. It's really got nothing to do with succeeding or not. It's got to do with the doing of it. And if you can do it and you come out with, oh, I know what to do, then next time you'll know what to do with the experience, and then that will give you a better outcome. So I really hope that you find that you can give it a try, because, yeah, it may turn out to be something that's really fun for you. If not, you've just learned another way to do something, and you've had some extra experience. Cows. Okay, so a simple little one this week. Well, not so simple really, but I'm not talking as much. And I hope that you can go back to one of your sky scenes and perhaps play with this idea. Of course, if you want it to look more specific like mountains, then you come in now. Look at the paper, it's bubbling a little bit, which means it's still very damp, which means it's the perfect time to come in with more specific hills or mountains. Just be aware that where you leave a hard edge, it's going to draw your eye because it's going against something that's soft and blurry. So be really sure where you want to put your mountain ridge. And it may be over your subject that you want to draw attention to. It may be over here where you think, oh, it's a bit light. And you don't have to do it everywhere. A lovely thing about watercolour is hard edges and then soft or disappearing edges. So have a little play with that as well. Review if you want to review this video a few times. Try it on your own. Okay, thanks for joining me again, guys. I hope I'll be a little bit sounding a bit better for next week, and let's be creative. Bye.